Fuck, how do podcasts start? Sorry, I'm super disorganized today. I don't know what my deal is.
It's okay. We'll take it out of your pay.
I deserve it. Hello, welcome to Brainworms, the world's only podcast recorded by a sentient mass of meat and hair with three unique screaming minds. I hope you enjoyed Eye of Argon, because we're finishing that today. Have fun listening to more Eye of Argon content. We briefly talked about Jim Thice last time and his kind of narrative and his history. I dug a little deeper into that. And apparently, unfortunately, he did not continue writing fiction, although he did pursue a degree in journalism, potentially because of the reception of Eye of Argon. He apparently was somewhat hurt by the reception.
That's a shame.
It speaks to the whole question of, at what cost fame sort of thing. Like, is all exposure good exposure?
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although apparently, at least into the 90s, he had kind of gotten some perspective. Because I'm going to read a quote from Wikipedia here. In an interview in '94, he said, "How many professional writers have written a complete story at so early an age? Even so, Eye of Argon isn't great. I basically don't know much about structure or composition." And apparently the interviewer praised him for being a good sport, and he replied, "Well, I mean, it was easier than showing bad character and asking for trouble." So apparently, at least into the 90s, he kind of got around it. And unfortunately, Jim did pass in 2002 of a heart condition, I believe.
Also, this interesting perspective here between Jim Thice and Norman Botton. Norman wrote a massive, massive work of questionable
that's
quality.
That's a very decent way of putting it.
And on the other hand, you've got Jim Thice, who wrote this one story when he was a child, and Norman Botton was a full-grown adult, and acts, frankly, like a child in his defense of the work on the internet, completely unwilling to accept any criticism. And I can understand that. Again, you get kind of interested in something, you become tied into it on a personal level. It's your baby.
And it seems like Norman was very invested in Empress Teresa.
Yeah.
There was way more going on there than just like, I want to write a book. This was gonna be like the magnum opus of humanity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
he would keep carving that book into stone if he could.
And I don't know, maybe there's another message out there for any aspiring creatives. It's been said before by Better Than Me, but kill your babies. You got to be willing to kill your darlings. Like, if it's terrible, it's got to go.
Right. And honestly, I think the contrast between Jim and Norman can kind of teach us something, in that Norman wrote Empress Teresa, got criticism, and went, "No, fuck you, this is the best thing ever," and just pushed and pushed and pushed. Jim, at a very young age, wrote, not a great story, but a competent story. Got comparable criticism, and went, "Oh, I guess I'm a bad writer. I'm never going to write again." Although I would be interested in what he did with his journalism career. There's not a lot of information out there about that.
Right.
So yeah, if you're a creative, like, find that balance between in terms of the value of criticism.
Also, in terms of killing your babies, imagine it that it's like a Lovecraftian god, and you have to sacrifice your children to it to appease it and get better ones.
That's actually a really delightful little metaphor for the creative process. Yeah,
I'll take it. So yeah, that's kind of the gist. Norman wrote this book at a very young age, got it into a fan. Fucking Norman. God, Freud. Have a conversation. Jim, Jesus Christ. He got his little fanzine and it exploded in all the wrong ways. And he kind of just gave up and went, I guess I'll just go and get a journalism degree and disappear.
But still being talked about.
Yeah. What have I created at 16 that anyone still cares about?
I created some messes that my parents still talk about, but that's about it.
Any interesting brief stories there?
Oh,
perhaps
not really.
Some insight into David?
I just was and always have been a sort of clutter bomb. My personal spaces tend to just pile up in giant, messy, unorganized, even I don't know where anything is kind of messes.
Yeah, I struggle with that too.
Yeah. So,
literally, like, I can look over to the left. I have perfectly good, like, drawers and cabinets and all this stuff in my room, and I put none of my clothes in there. I have very specific piles for where all these clothes go, so it's very well organized, and I know where everything is. But it's just out. So I like being able to see it all when I'm getting dressed.
You're like a dragon, a clothes dragon. So yeah. Well, that was some preamble.
Do we want to do a name introduction, because we missed that too?
Oh yeah, we did. I'm bad at podcast. How do you podcast? I got so taken by that tangent. Yeah, I'm Joe.
I'm David.
And I'm Chris.
And yep, again, that was a pretty lengthy preamble. But if you enjoyed any of this, we're on the social media, we're on the YouTube. And if you want to give us some money, hit up that Patreon, patreon.com/brainwormspodcast. And support the show. We keep bouncing around fun ideas for bonuses and benefits. So see what's going on over there. You ready, David?
I'm ready. Ready as I'm ever gonna be, anyway. Chapter 5. Up to the altar and be done with it, wench, ordered a fidgeting shaman as he gave the female a grim stare accompanied by the wrinkling of his lips to a mirthful grin of delight.
I was just thinking that.
Every time. The girl burst into a slow, steady whimper, stooping shakily to her knees and cringing woefully from the priest with both arms wound snake-like around the bulging jade shin rising before her scantily attired figure.
Stop.
How do you burst slowly?
Like a flower, I guess.
Guess that's bursting. I don't know. It's a weird. Again, we need to revoke Jim Theis's adverb license because he's used his allotment. Calm down. You've made your point.
Her face was redly inflamed from the salty flow of tears spouting.
That is what information
glassy,
is.
dilated
eyeballs.
Same
things. He was hotly on fire.
Yeah.
With short, heavy footfalls, the priest approached the female, his piercing stare never wavering from her quivering young countenance. Halting before the terrified girl, he projected his arm outward and motioned her to arise with an upward movement of his hand. The girl's whimpering increased slightly, and she sunk closer to the floor rather than arising.
This is pretty gross. What's happening right now?
The flickering torches outlined her trim build with a weird ornate glow as it cast a ghostly shadow dancing in horrid waves of splendor over smoothly worn whiteness of the marble-hewn altar. The shaman's lips curled back farther, exposing a set of blackened, decaying molars which transformed his slovenly grin into a wide, greasy arc of sadistic mirth and alternately interposed into the female a strong sensation of stomach-curdling nausea. Have it as you will, female. gloated the seriously. Jesus wept.
God fucking damn it. Female.
Have it as you will, female, gloated the enhanced priest as he
What?
bent over at
Is he
the
a cyborg?
waist, projecting his ape-like arms forward and clasped his ape-like arms.
Ape-like, okay.
Yeah.
I thought the stereotype of priests was that they were like slim and frail, but like apes have they're.
I think in
apes
the
are built.
world of Grignr, of Discordia or whatever the fuck, everyone is a bodybuilder except for unless they're fat.
Unless they're female.
Or they're females. They're just muscles.
Also, remember, this is an enhanced priest.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Human 2.0.
But
he clicked on the barbarian equivalent of I did sit-ups for 30 days. Look what happened next.
Fucking One Punch Man. Have it as you will, female, gloated the enhanced priest as he bent over at the waist, projecting his ape-like arms forward and clasped the female's slender arms with his hairy, round fists. With an inward surge of his biceps, he harshly jerked the trembling girl to her feet and smothered her salty, wet cheeks with the moldy touch of his decrepit, dull red lips. That might be the first time that he's described a woman as anything other than female.
Yeah, or wench.
Right. Like trembling girl, at least. For a guy who loves his adjectives and adverbs, you'd think, there are nouns other than female.
Yeah.
The vile stench of the shaman's hot, fetid breath overcame the nauseated female with the deep, soul-searing sickness, causing her to wrench her head backwards and regurgitate a slimy, orange-white stream of swelling gore over the richly woven purple robe of the enthused acolyte.
Gore? She literally puked her guts up?
Apparently. And maybe I'm just getting minor Stockholm syndrome, or maybe I'm just kind of getting used to the language of Jim Thice. Some of these descriptions, if he had any kind of restraint, would have been kind of interesting.
Yeah. If these bursts of adverbs were interspersed.
Yeah, and it wasn't just every action. He lustily reached and groped for the greasy, swelling hamburger. You can calm down. You can describe a thing as itself. And then when you really describe the thing, then it becomes very interesting.
Save the powerful language for a powerful point.
Yeah. And again, I said this last episode, but the key word for all of this is lurid.
Mm-hmm.
And
purple.
Yeah, it's so purple that it's ultraviolet.
Yeah. But I do think it kind of sucks that he stopped writing fiction after this, because if he had just gotten some constructive criticism, I think he maybe could have written some stuff later in life.
Oh yeah.
Worst case scenario, let's pretend that Feist never improved. I would have if he had more books that were just more of this, but different settings, different stories, I would say, hey, heck, let's keep reading them.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Jim Thice in the age of the internet, writing this sort of thing as, Conan fan fiction or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This guy would have gotten shit on when he was, 16 publishing this on the internet, but maybe he would have taken some of that criticism into consideration, gotten, a little better at doing what he did, with some positive feedback and just time.
Practice.
Practice and getting better at his art. There's genuinely a decent amount of, admittedly over descriptive prose, but if for a certain style of literature, this could work really well.
Right.
Bottom line, you can tell that when Feist is typing this down, he sees all of this in his head.
He has vivid, he has a very vivid imagination.
Yeah. So that's a pretty rare quality, for writing. I think that's one of the essentials.
And again, like, we don't know what he did with his journalism degree. We should probably get back on track soon. I kind of hope he went into something like journalism, where these vivid descriptions would really be rewarded.
You say sports journalism?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't know. We may find out.
I did an amount of research and couldn't find anything, but I don't know. Maybe it's out there somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe he just worked in a pool. Never had his name on a tagline or a byline or anything.
Yeah. Anyway.
At any rate. The priest's lips trembled with a malicious rage as he removed his callous paws from the girl's arms and replaced them with tightly around her undulating neck, shaking her violently to and fro.
Is there any rage that isn't malicious?
I mean, there's righteous rage, right?
That still has malice to it.
Yeah, I mean, I assume when you're raging, you probably are out to cause some form of harm.
I didn't mean for that to turn into like a commentary. I just wanted it to be like a quick little quip.
Well, that's not what we're here for.
No.
All right, where was I? Oh, God. The girl gasped a tortured groan from her clamped lungs, her sea-blue eyes bulging forth from damp sockets. Cocking her right foot backwards, she leashed it desperately outwards with the strength of a demon possessed, lodging her sandaled foot squarely between the shaman's testicles.
Between them?
Between them, yeah.
So she just hit the perineum.
And like some skin in between, I guess. I don't know, man.
Her aim tain't bad. The startled priest released his crushing grip, crimping his body over at the waist, overlooking his recessed belly, wide open in a deep chasm. His face flushed to a rose-red shade of crimson, eyelids fluttering wide with eyeballs protruding blindly outwards from their sockets to their outmost perimeters, while his lips quivered wildly about allowing an agonized wallow to gust forth as his breath billowed from burning lungs. His hands...
That's a sentence.
Yeah. This is really, like, I really don't know if I should pre-read things, but this is really hard to cold read.
Oh yeah, like we even commented last episode, like the fact that you're reading this as coherently as you are is impressive.
His hands reached out to clutching his urinary gland as his knees wobbled rapidly about for a few seconds, then buckled.
Is he is he Hank? My narrow urethra.
Causing the ruptured shaman to collapse in an egg-huddled mass to the granite pavement, rolling helplessly about in his agony. The pathetic screeches of the shaman groveling in dejected misery upon the hand-hewn granite-laid pavement, worn smooth by countless hours of arduous sweat and toil. A welter of ichor oozing through his clenched hands. Wow. Like, what
This is a lot of language dedicated to this guy got kicked in the nuts and he fell over.
Yeah.
Like, apparently real fucking hard.
Because, like,
there's a
fluids
welter
coming out of him?
ichor.
Yeah.
Maybe he's really into it and like that got him off. I don't know.
I'm confused. Because, like, did he get stabbed at some point and we just missed it in all of the words?
No, but, like, why do his balls have ichor?
I don't know.
I'm kind of surprised that he isn't a eunuch.
Well, no, he's an enhanced priest.
Yeah.
No, that's what it means. He's an enhanced priest. He has 4 testicles, and she kicked him in between the 4 testicles.
Makes sense. Okay, mystery solved.
Cool. That's canon now.
Attracted the perturbed attention of his comrades from their fetid ululations. The actions of this rebellious wench bespoke the credence of an unheard-of sacrilege. Never before in a lost maze of untold eons had a chosen one dared to demonstrate such blasphemy in the face of the cult's idolic deity. That actually is a good sentence.
Holds up.
Yeah. The girl cowered in unreasoning terror, helpless in the face of the emblazoned acolyte's rage, her orchid-tussled face smothered betwixt her bulging bosom as she shut her curled lashed tightly, hoping to... Yeah.
So she got scared and like a mutant ostrich, she dug her head between her breasts.
Yeah, she's burying her face in her own tits right now. That's what I'm getting.
I mean, or they're just that math, which, under the circumstances, maybe is what we're seeing.
Well, there's a, like, when it comes to boob physics, there's like a weight to sag ratio. This would be an untold of level of perkiness.
I mean, this was the direct ancestor of anime.
This is someone from Dolly Parton's lineage.
Ah. Now you're just making me think of like breastomancy.
Moving on. Her orchid-tussled face smothered betwixt her bulging bosom as she shut her curled lashed tightly, hoping to open them and find herself awakening from a morbid nightmare. Yet the hand of destiny decreed her no such mercy. The antagonized pack of leering shaman converging tensely upon her prostrate form were entangled all too lividly in the grim web of reality.
What?
Yeah, she's still there.
I'm still kind of having the problem we had last episode where, like, there are so many words, and maybe it's because I'm hearing it and not reading it.
Yeah.
No, it's hard for me to actually pull information out of it.
Yeah, it's hard to parse. It's real easy to get lost in this wilderness.
The signal to noise ratio is way off here.
I'm still thinking about her seething milkers or whatever the fuck.
At least she only has two of them, like unlike that one bar mutant.
with her back breasts.
Yes. Shuddering from the clammy touch of the shaman as they grappled with her supple form, hands wrenching at her slender arms and legs in all directions, her bare body being molested in the midst of a labyrinth of orange smudges, purpled satin, and mangled skulls, shadowed in an eerie crimson glow. Her confused head reeled, then clouded in a mist of enshrouding ebony, as she lapsed beneath the protective sheet of unconsciousness to a land peach and resign. Chapter 6. "Take hold of this rope," said the first soldier. "Climb out from your pit, slut. Your presence is requested in another far deeper hellhole."
This is a very verbose guard.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say.
Grignr slipped his right hand to his thigh, concealing a small opaque object beneath the folds of the G-string wrapped about his waist.
All right.
He's a Chippendale dancer. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at it. Like, I like that, like, this writer is really good at finding ways to describe everything he sees. Putting, like, the scent leather thong, like, you just know it's a G-string. It's fine.
Yep. Although I will take a moment to say that this is the second time he's used the word opaque in a completely inappropriate manner. Like,
most objects are opaque unless they're transparent. It's fine.
Like, we don't need to know if it's opaque. That's fine. It's an object. But
although I do like that the antagonists continue to refer to Grignr as slut.
Yes. Brine wells swelled in Grignr's cold, jade-squinting eyes, which, grown accustomed to the gloom of the Stygian pools of ebony engulfing him, were bedazzled and blinded by flickering radiance cast forth by the second soldier's resin torch. Tightly gripped in the second soldier's right hand, opposite the intermittent torch, was a large, double-edged axe, a long leather-wound, oaken-handled transfixing the center of the weapon's iron head. Adorning the torsos of both of the sentries were thin yet sturdy hauberks, the breastplates of which were woven of tightly hemmed twines of reinforced silver braiding.
That's what a hauberk is.
So far, we've learned in almost an entire paragraph that there are 2 guards with axes and armor. Cupping the soldiers' feet were thick leather sandals wound about their shins
about their shoes
to 2 inches below their knees. Wrapped about their waists were wide satin girdles, with slender-bladed poniards dangling loosely from them, the hilts of which featured scarlet-encrusted gems.
No, Joe, it's important that Feist talks about their shoes. Otherwise, I would have just assumed that they were wearing thigh-high BDSM high heels.
Kind of like that better.
Yeah. It would really pull out the tightly hemmed twines of reinforced silver braiding on their breastplates.
Yeah, it's a classy fashion combination.
Resting upon the manes of their heads and reaching midway to their brows were smooth copper morions. Spiraling the lower portion of the helmet were short, up-curved silver spikes, while a golden hump spired from the top of each bassinet. Beneath their chins, wound around their necks and draping their clad shoulders, dangled regal purple satin cloaks, which flowed midway to the soldiers' feet. Hand over hand, feet braced against the dank walls of the enclosure, huge Grignr ascended from the moldering depths of the forlorn abyss.
So in this new paragraph, we learned that they have helmets and shoes.
Yeah, we learned in that entire paragraph that they were dressed.
Yeah.
And every detail of what they were wearing, which is, useful, I guess, for, imagining the guards, but also probably better to be dispersed throughout the telling rather than just one giant info dump.
Right. Or just say that they're armed and armored and let the audience just kind of paint their own picture. It's fine.
Sure. I mean, I will say, I guess he did a great job of building this image of sort of Roman legionnaire style, but without saying they were Roman legionnaires. Like, that, kudos.
Yeah.
Also, way to know the names of ancient armors and arms.
It's true, and this was before you could just Google stuff. Yeah. And before D&D, fair point.
Yeah.
Although he may have just been using words he read in other fantasy novels.
Oh, almost certainly, yeah.
I find that sort of thing question. I'll if you don't mind me making a quick
please do.
Tangent. I find that thing kind of questionable because like when you say Morian, like you're getting your point across, so on and so forth. However, what if someone doesn't know what a Morian is?
Yeah, who does know what a Morian is? Like, people don't know that word. Unless they play a lot of D&D or read a lot of fantasy novels or are hardcore history buffs.
This book was published 3 years before D&D came out, so...
Yeah, and also, he was obviously playing to his audience here. Like,
right, yeah, he published this in a fan publication for a sci-fi...
So in your guys' opinion...
I forgot how to work.
In your guys' opinion, in terms of best practice, would you guys say it's better to be official and clear and say and say the name of the helmet, or just call it a helmet and briefly describe it?
Call it a helmet and briefly describe it.
Yeah, you could. I mean, what I think I would do typically would be something along the lines of you might say helmet first of all, and then briefly describe the image of it, and then later you could, use the proper noun or the proper name for it while all, to kind of share that knowledge and to not have to completely describe the whole thing again.
Right.
And in that way, your reader also learns a thing.
It's true.
Yeah, just a thought.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Hand over hand, feet braced against the dank walls of the enclosure, huge Grignr ascended from the moldering depths of the forlorn abyss.
Not as big as Jake.
Not as big as Jake.
Jake and Grignr, man, that's the team up we need.
Who would win in a fight, Jake or Grignr? Answer in the comments.
His swelled limbs, stiff due to the boredom of a timeless inactivity, compounded by the musty atmosphere. Atmosphere. That's the word on the page. Atmosphere. Okay. Compounded by the musty atmosphere and jagged granite protuberance against his body. Craved for action. The opportunity now presenting itself served the purpose of oiling his rusty joints and honing his dulled senses.
It was like a portmanteau between atmosphere and moisture.
Yeah. Yeah. If it were on purpose, that would be kind of a clever thing.
Yeah.
Also, if it weren't the only example of that in the entire... He braced himself, facing the second soldier. The sentry's stature was wildly exaggerated in the glare of the flickering crescent cupex in his right fist. His eyes were wide open in a slightly slanted owlish glaze.
Wide open and a slightly slanted... What?
That's not... What? Yeah, I'm confused too.
I mean, I guess, like epicanthic folds, slightly oriental eye shape. Middle Eastern-ish. I'm not sure.
I don't care if it's accurate. Like, it just doesn't really parse well.
Yeah. His eyes were wide open in a slightly slanted owlish glaze, enhanced in their sinister intensity by the hawk-bill curve of his nose and pale yellow peak of his cheeks.
Why are we still describing Grignr? He's the protagonist. We've met him.
Oh no, this is the sentry.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Who must be important characters by, how much time they're getting.
I got so hung up in all the adjectives and adverbs, I didn't realize we weren't describing the main character still. That's my mistake.
No, this is describing the sentry.
Okay. Who's probably going to die in the next scene.
The next paragraph and a half, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Place your hands behind your back, said the second soldier as he raised his axe over his right shoulder blade and cast it a wavering glance. We must bind your wrists to parry any attempts to escape. Be sure to make the knot a stout one, Broig. Wouldn't want our guest to take leave of our guidance.
It's like this is the first time they've done this.
Yeah.
Broig grasped Grignr's left wrist and reached for the barbarian's right wrist. Grignr wrenched his right arm free and swiveled to face Broig. Reach beneath his loincloth with his right hand. The sentry grappled at his
wiener. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm such a child.
No, you're fine. I'm actually more concerned by the fact that he has a G-string and a loincloth.
Yeah, there's a lot of not much going on down there.
Yeah. And I feel like if you have one, you don't need the other to some extent.
I mean, he's got the basically he's got himself a little thong with some draperies. That way he keeps everything nice and tight and collected, so it's not just bouncing around while he's killing folks.
Sure.
But, he doesn't want to be indecent, so there's just a panel.
That makes sense. Yeah, and maybe the window blow, and it's a tease, oh, what's going on under there?
Grignr wrenched his right arm free and swilvelled to face Broig, reach beneath his loincloth with his right hand. The sentry grappled at his girdle for the sheathed dagger. There's no undercurrent of anything there.
Yeah.
The sentry grappled at his girdle for the sheathed dagger.
To the credit of Jim Theis, and again, this just goes back to Robert E. Howard, but at least the fan service goes both ways.
True. Yeah.
I kind of appreciate that.
Although there's also the argument, and we, not to get too distracted here, but the argument that's made in comic book art a lot of times about how female characters are drawn.
Who's it for? Right.
Yeah. It's for the male gaze. You're creating this massive, muscle-bound hawk of a man who isn't actually something that most women would find attractive.
Sure.
It's an idealized form of male power.
Masculinity.
Yep.
Yeah.
But again, the 70s and like 17. So I'm not going to hold that against him.
No, but I do think that's a good conversation to have when you talk about media like this.
Absolutely.
So it's always nice when that comes up.
Once again, the sentry grappled at his girdle for the sheathed dagger. I really just wanted to keep reading that sentence.
Do you want to read it a couple more times, or are you...
Just once more. The sentry grappled at his girdle for the sheathed dagger, but recoiled short of his intentions as Grignr's right arm swept to his gorge. The soldier went... that's throat in this context, but...
Is it, though?
His escape attempt includes giving the guard a handy.
I mean, that would probably distract him.
It's true.
Get my attention. The soldier went limp. It didn't work. His bobbing eyes rolling beneath fluttering eyelids.
Sorry, Grignr, you tried.
This feels so intentional.
A deep welt across his spouting gullet. Without lingering to observe the result of his efforts, Grignr dropped to his knees.
Oh, wow, Grignr. Oh, my.
The second soldier's axe cleft over Grignr's head in a blaze of silvered ferocity, severing several scarlet locks from his scalp. Coming to rest in his fellow's stomach, the iron head crashed through mail and flesh with splintering force, spilling a pool of crimsoned entrails over the granite paving. Jim Theis really likes his, it's not alliteration. Alliteration is vowel sounds, but I'm blanking on the word that's...
Consonants?
Well, when you're doing consonants in a row, it's... damn it. I'll look it up later. Find out. But yeah, it's basically alliteration, but with consonant sounds, with hard sounds. You know, the S's here, severing scarlet locks from his scalp. He's a big fan of that kind of thing.
Alliteration, according to Google, alliteration happened when consonant sounds are repeated in two or more words.
Oh, that's right.
She
that is
sells, she shells. Yeah, so you got it.
Okay, yeah, it's shit, I just had it. When it's vowel sounds, it's
alliteration. Google.
No, that's when it's vowel sounds, there's another word for it. Something else, and it was just there and it's gone again. Doesn't matter.
Assonance?
Assonance, that is it. Yes, assonance.
That's all Google. That's not me pulling from any sort of knowledge base.
Fine. That's fine. You've saved me from embarrassment on a podcast. Too late for
Just
that.
The worst kind of embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this everything we do here is embarrassing. I think that ship sailed for you.
Coming to rest in his fellow's stomach, the iron head crashed through mail and flesh with splintering force, spilling a pool of crimsoned entrails over the granite paving. Before the sentry could wrench his axe free from his comrade's carcass, he found Grignr's massive hands clasped about his throat, choking the life from his clamped lungs. With a zealous grunt, the accordion flexed his tightly corded biceps, forcing the grim-faced soldier to one knee. The sentry plunged his right fist into Grignr's face, digging his grimy nails into the barbarian's flesh. Ejaculating a curse through rasping teeth, Grignr surged the bulk of his weight forward,
Oh my god.
bowling the besieged soldier over upon his back. The sentry's arms collapsed to his thigh, shuddering convulsively, his bulging eyes staring blindly from a bloated, cherry-red face.
Are you going to be okay?
You know, that word does mean more than just one thing.
It does. It really does. Although, for that reason, I think it's fallen out of use.
Yeah, absolutely. And also contextually to what we were just talking about, it was the perfect word choice.
It's true.
Rising to his feet, Grignr shook the blood from his eyes, ruffling his surly red mane as a brush fire swaying to the nighttime breeze. Stooping over the sprawled corpse of the first soldier, Grignr retrieved a small white object from a pool of congealing gore. Snorting a gusty billow of mirth, he once more concealed the tiny object beneath his loincloth, the tediously honed pelvis bone of the broken rodent. Don't sell yourself short, Grignr. I'm sure it's not that bad. I mean, I know there wasn't a lot to do down there in the dark, but
what is he doing with this mouse bone? Like, what's his end game? He killed the guards effortlessly. He's got their weapons, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, now they're dead, and there was an axe and a whole lot of armor.
Yeah, although it might not fit his massive frame, so that could be the armor could be an issue. Presumably, the guards have keys to get in and out of the oubliette.
One would think, yeah.
So yeah, like I don't know what he's trying to do with this mouse bone. I thought he was gonna like shank a guard with it, but that didn't happen.
Well, I think that's what he did in with amongst all this detail, the important detail that when he reached beneath his loincloth, he actually grabbed the mouse bone, or rat bone rather, and used that to stab the guard in the throat.
Yeah, I did miss that.
Yeah, it doesn't actually say it. It just says, again, he reached beneath his loincloth with his right hand, and then his right arm swept to the soldier's gorge. There's no actual mention of the bone until he picks it up later and sticks it back in his loincloth without apparently stopping to get the goddamn axe.
Right.
But we haven't finished yet, so who knows?
Maybe he'll just mysteriously have it in the next section.
Yeah.
Maybe he kills a dragon with it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's going to fight his way out of this entire whatever it is, palace or area with or mine or whatever the fuck with pelvis bone, which I'm here for.
Right. I mean, you're just showing off at that point. Like, when there are obvious lootable weapons, and you're like, "No, I got this mouse bone. It's fine."
Well, the thing is, that's just he didn't have proficiency in those. He specialized characters, man.
That's true.
Returning his attention toward the second soldier, Grignr turned to the task of attiring his limbs. To move about freely through the dim recesses of the castle would require the grotesque garb of its soldiery. So he is going to take their stuff. That's good.
Yeah.
Utilizing the silence and stealth acquired in the untamed climes of his childhood, Grignr slink through twisted corridors and winding stairways, biting his way with the confiscated torch of his dispatched guardian. Knowing where his steps were leading to, Grignr meandered aimlessly in search of an exit from the chateau's dim confines. I think that's the first time he's actually dangled a preposition like that. Not bad.
Yeah. He's learning to write in real time.
The wild blood coursing through his veins yearned for the undefiled freedom of the livid wilderness lands. Coming upon a fork in the passage he trekked, voices accompanied by clinking footfalls discerned to his sensitive ears from the left corridor. Wishing to avoid contact, Grignr veered to the right passageway. If quested as to the purpose of his presence, his barbarous accent would reveal his identity, being that his attire was not that of the castle's mercenary troops.
And he's suddenly become James Bond.
In grim silence, Grignr treaded down the dingily lit corridor, a stalking dingily.
Cool.
A stalking panther creeping warily along on padded feet. After an interminable period of wandering through the dull corridors, no gaps to break the monotony of the cold gray walls, Grignr espied a small winding stairway. Descending the flight of arced granite slabs to their posterior, Grignr was confronted by a short hallway leading to a tall, arched wooden doorway.
Really getting a lot of descriptions about the floor.
It's I feel like Jim Thice would have really taken off in a career in like interior design.
Sure. Maybe in later life he wrote copy for like the Home Depot.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Halting before the teeming portal, Grignr rested his shaggy head sideways against the barrier. Detecting no sounds from within, grasped the looped metal handle of the door, his arms surging with the tremendous effort of bulging muscles. Yet the door would not budge. Retrieving his axe from where he had sheathed it beneath his girdle. What? Oh,
I was just trying to make that work in my head. And I don't know.
Oh my god, his G-string is a bag of holding.
My god, it is.
He
like
needed
a fucking
it.
Highlander.
Yeah.
He needed it for his massive
Rat bone.
Massive rat bone would be a good name for an 80s metal band.
That's awesome.
You're welcome, Internet.
Yep.
Retrieving his axe from where he had sheathed it beneath his girdle, he hefted it in his mighty hands with an appeased grunt, and wedging one of the blackened edges into the crack between the portal and its iron-rimed sill.
Axes aren't that heavy.
I wasn't sure what crack he was going to wedge it into for a second.
Bracing his sandaled right foot against the roughly hewn wall, teeth tightly clenched, Grignr apple-levered the oaken haft, employing it as a lever whereby to pry open the barrier.
Thank you for that explanation.
If the ceiling is 20 feet up and it's a 10-foot shelf, you have 10 feet of space left.
Yep. I love when writers use the first half of their sentence to describe what they then describe in the second half of their sentence.
It's real good.
That's my favorite thing. The leather-wound hilt bending to its utmost limits of endurance, the massive portal swung open with a grating of snapped latch and rusty iron hinges. Glancing about the dust-swirled room in the gloomily dancing glare of his flickering cresset, Grignr eyed evidences of the enclosure being nothing more than a forgotten storeroom. Miscellaneous articles required for the maintenance of a castle were piled in disorganized heaps at infrequent intervals toward the wall opposite the barbarian's piercing stare.
All that effort and he broke into the broom closet.
Utilizing long, bounding strides, Grignr paced his way over to the mounds of supplies to discover if any articles of value were contained within their midst.
If another, however many words we've expended from the beginning of chapter 4 to now, chapter 5, I wonder what a competent writer could have conveyed with the same amount of words.
Read any book.
Detecting a faint clinking sound, Grignr sprawled to his left side with the speed of a striking cobra, landing harshly upon his back, torch and axe loudly clattering to the floor in a morass of sparks and flame. An elm-woven board leapt from collapsed flooring, clashing against the jagged flooring and spewing a shower of orange and yellow sparks over Grignr's startled face. Rising uneasily to his feet, the half-stunned accordion glared down at the gruesome arm of death he had unwittingly sprung.
Sorry, I was thinking about a half-stunned accordion.
God damn it.
And then there's a word that I genuinely don't know how to pronounce. And it's something that is apparently spoken.
Spell it out.
Do your best.
M-R-I-F-K.
Murph?
Rifk!
Murph! Yeah.
Let's see what Google has to say about it.
If not for his keen auditory organs and lightning-steeled reflexes, Grignr
ears
would have been groping through the shadowed hell pits of the Grim Reaper. He had unknowingly stumbled upon an ancient, long-forgotten booby trap. Who booby traps the broom closet?
Yeah, what? Who?
Oh my god!
To what end? To inconvenience the janitor?
To keep the janitor on his toes. No, Joe, this is like the origination of like a whole cult of janitors that end in the badass janitors that could disarm bombs with their keys from trigger warning.
It all makes sense.
Same universe.
He had unknowingly stumbled upon an ancient, long-forgotten booby trap, a mistake which would have stunted the perusal of longevity of one less agile. A mechanism, similar in type to that of a miniature catapult, was concealed beneath two collapsible sections of granite flooring. The arm of the device was 4 feet long, boasting razor-like cleats at regular intervals along its face.
What's the floor made of? I'm kind of fuzzy about the construction materials used in the flooring of this structure.
Really shitty granite that can collapse if you step in the wrong place.
Apparently.
The arm of the device was 4 feet long, boasting razor-like cleats at regular intervals along its face, with which it was to skewer the luckless body of its would-be victim. Grignr had stepped upon a concealed catch which released a small metal latch beneath the two granite sections, causing them to fall inward, and thereby loose the spiked arm of death they precariously held in.
And you see that now that would be death because the sharpness cuts skin, and the skin covers things like arteries, and arteries hold blood. And when that happens and you lose a lot of blood, the human brain experiences this thing called death. And now we go into the philosophies of what the human being thinks of death.
This was a room that he literally had to pry open with a battle axe.
Although I have to come to kind of Jim's defense because this is a very true to life, almost prophecy of what Dungeons and Dragons games were going to be like.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is bad dungeon design, y'all.
What's this room? It's locked. Okay, we're going to spend 20 minutes unlocking it,
failing like 5 checks to get it open.
Only to find that after you've opened it, it's trapped and contains nothing of value.
Yep.
Partially out of curiosity, and partially out of an inordinate fear of becoming a pincushion for a possible second trap, Grignr plunged his torch into the exposed gap in the floor. The floor of a second chamber stood out 7 feet below the glare. Tossing his torch through the aperture, Grignr grasped the side of an adjoining tile, dropping down. I'm going to say that actually it's not an inordinate fear. Like, once you find that this shit room is trying to kill you, it's best to be cautious of any other room you go into.
Yeah, like check the toilet before you use it, man.
Glancing about the room, Grignr discovered that he had descended into the palace's mausoleum. Rectangular stone crypts cluttered the floor at evenly placed intervals. The tops of the enclosures were plated with thick layers of virgin gold, while the sides were plated with white ivory, at one time sparkling, but now grown dingy through the passage of the rays of all-encompassing Mother Time.
So not only is the broom closet trapped, but if you happen to survive the trap, it leads directly into the treasure room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only if you're willing to do some grave robbing, though. Which, I'm assuming he is.
Oh yeah, Grignr's into it.
Featured at the head of each sarcophagus in tarnished silver was an expugnissively carved likeness of its rotting inhabitant.
Not sure if real word.
I would like to know how Grignr knows what the inhabitants look like.
Well, I mean, I assume that that's if you see a sarcophagus and it has an image which is expugnissively carved, you can probably assume that it's the rotting inhabitant.
Oh, that's fair. However, Grignr is a dumb barbarian from the wilderness and or the mountains.
Or the desert.
Or the desert. It depends.
Those wilderness desert mountains. It's Utah. He's from Utah. A dingy atmosphere pervaded the air of the chamber, which sealed in the enclosure for an unknown period had grown thick and stale. Intermingling with the curdled currents was the repugnant stench of slowly moldering flesh, creeping ever slowly but surely through the minute cracks in the numerous vaults. Due to the embalming of the bodies, their flesh decayed at a much slower rate than is normal, yet the nauseous odor was none the less repellent.
We now know how embalming
poorly
works.
embalmed, actually. Yeah. If they're... Yeah. Towering over Grignr's head was the trap he released. The mechanism of the miniaturized catapult was cluttered with mildew and cobwebs. Notwithstanding these relics of antiquity, its efficiency remained unimpinged. To the right of the trap wound a short stairway through a recess in the ceiling, a concealed entrance leading to the mausoleum for which the catapult had obviously been erected as a silent, relentless guardian. Climbing up the side of the device, Grignr set to the task of resetting its mechanism. In the event that a search was organized, it would prove well to leave no evidence of his presence open to wandering eyes. Besides, it might even serve to dwindle the size of an opposing force.
Because, never tell your own guards about the traps in the castle they guard.
You wouldn't want to do that. Descending from his perch, Grignr was startled by a faintly muffled scream of horrified desperation. His hair prickled yawkishly in disorganized clumps along his scalp, as a cold danced along the length of his spinal cord. No mortal barrier, human or otherwise, was capable of arousing the numbing sensation of fear inside of Grignr's smoldering soul. However, he was overwrought by the forces of the barbarian's instinctive fear of the supernatural. His mighty thews had always served to adequately conquer any tangible foe, but the intangible was something distant and terrible. Dim, horrifying tales passed by word of mouth over glimmering campfires and skins of wine had more than once served the purpose of chilling the marrowed core of his sturdy-limbed bones. Yet the scream contained a strangely human quality, unlike that which Grignr imagined would come from the lungs of a demon or spirit, making Grignr take short, nervous strides advancing to the sarcophagus from which the sound was issuing. Clenching his teeth in an attempt to steel his jangled nerves, Grignr slid the engraved slab from the vault with a sharp rasp of grinding stone. Another long-drawn cry of terror-infested anguish met the barbarian, scoring like the shrill piping of a demented banshee, piercing the inner fibers of his superstitious brain with primitive dread and awe. Stooping over to espy the tomb's contents, the glittering accordion's nostrils were singed by the scorching aroma of a moldering corpse, long shut up and fermenting. The same moment, taking a drink here.
Are you okay? We're keeping that in.
Breathe the water?
Oh, shit. Oh.
Did you try to escape this book by drowning yourself on land?
Oh, God, hold on.
Standing by.
Yeah, you might want to pause the timer, because I might need a second here.
Yeah.
That would actually be a pretty interesting setup for a Lovecraftian story, like a man found dead, lungs full of water, like on land.
Right.
Or even like a Sherlock Holmes style mystery story.
Jesus.
Since we're taking a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna go get a tissue and blow my nose. I'll be back in like just a few seconds.
Cool.
Yeah, do you think?
Stooping over to espy the tomb's contents, the glittering accordion's nostrils were singed by the scorching aroma of a moldering corpse, long shut up and fermenting, the same putrid scent which permeated the entire chamber, though multiplied to a much more concentrated dosage. The shriveled, leathery packet of crumbling bones and dried, flacking flesh offered no resistance, but remained in a fixed position of perpetual vigilance, watching over its dim abode from hollow, gaping sockets. The tortured cries were not coming from the tomb, but from some hidden depth below. Pulling the reeking corpse from its resting place, Grignr tossed it to the floor in a broken, mangled heap. Upon one side of the crypt's bottom was attached a series of tiny hinges, while running parallel along the opposite side of a convex railing-like protuberance, laid so as to appear as a part of the interior surface of the sarcophagus. Protuberance, by the way, is a terrible word that should be avoided wherever possible.
Sure.
Unless you're talking about Mrs. Butterworth and how much of a tragedy it is that we have been robbed of 2 protuberances worth of syrup for like decades now.
It's true. Yeah.
But we're not talking about that.
It sounds like you really want to talk about
it. Dave was going to go off and start a whole new podcast.
Just a rant about consumer goods.
I'd listen. Raising the slab upon its bronze hinges, long removed from the gaze of human eyes, Grignr perceived a scene which caused his blood to smolder, not unlike bubbling molten lava.
What?
Directly below him, a whimpering female lay stretched upon a smooth surface marble altar. A pack of greasy-faced shaman clustered around her in a tight circular formation.
How much space is there in that sarcophagus?
It's like the writer had these 2 subplots about the woman and the cultists, and then Grignr and the oubliette. And just how do I get these 2 characters together? Right? He's going to go in the janitor's closet, and there's going to be a hole in the floor. He's going to climb down that.
But that's not deep enough. There's going to be another hole.
Yeah.
And also, I take great issue with the fact that the oubliette is on an elevated place than a temple. I'm sorry, I thought oubliettes were supposed to be like underground.
He's going down from the dungeon.
Well, these are mines, right? Like that was established, I think, in the first part that he was being taken.
Like, unless I'm wrong, what they were going to do was they were going to stick him in the dungeon and just put him in solitary confinement for a while to break him and then put him in the mines.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I don't think we're in the mines.
So yeah, there's it's apparently this thing is a fucking TARDIS. That's
I can only assume.
Directly below him, a whimpering female lay stretched upon a smooth-surfaced marble altar.
I can't not think of it now.
A pack of greasy-faced shaman clustered around her in a tight circular formation. Crouched over the girl was a tall, pot-bellied priest, his face dominated by a disgusting, open-mouthed grimace of sadistic glee. Suspended from the acolyte's clenched right hand was a carven, oval-faced mallet, which he waved menacingly over the girl's shadowed face, an incoherent gibberish flowing from his grinning, thick-lipped mouth. In the face of the amorphous, broad-breasted... No, I'm sorry. In the face of the amorphous, broad-breasted female, stretched out alluringly before his gaping eyes, the universal whim of nature filling a plea of
she's being
despair.
Tortured. That's not alluring. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, inappropriate.
It's like she was vomiting and bleeding out. Man, she's kind of hot.
She's got tits out though. It's great.
She's very broad-breeded.
Look at them big breeds.
or no. I don't think that's supposed to be breasted. I think it's supposed to be breaded. She's from KFC.
Oh, she's a delicious appetizer. That's why she's alluring to Grignr.
Right. The universal whim of nature filling a plea of despair inside of his white-hot soul, Grignr acted in the only manner he could perceive. Giving vent to a hoarse, throat-rending battle cry, Grignr plunged into the midst of the startled shaman.
I was curious, just real quick, was that horse the animal or horse as in horse?
No, horse, H-O-A-R-S-E.
Okay, I didn't trust the writer to do it. Go on.
Grignr plunged into the midst of the startled shaman, torch simmering in his left hand and axe twirling in his right hand. A gaunt, skull-faced priest standing at the far side of the altar clutched desperately at his throat, coughing furiously in an attempt to catch his breath. Lurching helplessly to and fro, the acolyte pitched headlong against the gleaming base of a massive jade idol. Writhing agonizedly against the hideous image, foam flecking his chalk-white lips, the priest struggled helplessly, the victim of an epileptic seizure.
That's convenient.
He just had a seizure for no... Was Grignr just so scary that his mind unraveled? What the fuck?
No, he just got kicked between his testicles.
Oh, did I miss that?
No, this is the same scene. The same woman where we started.
Oh, it's that guy. Okay.
Yeah, so this is
now I'm seeing how the web connects. I thought just the appearance of Grignr.
No, I think
that effect.
This is, although, I'm a little confused because this is the same priest who previously was described as having long ape-like arms and a massive belly, I believe, and I got the impression of a very big person.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's gaunt, skull-faced, and I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I call into question your interpretation because the order of events, as just described, was Grignr releases a battle cry and charges. Then the priest gets his forenuts kicked. But in the previous description of this event, we the lady never heard a battle cry.
No, that's all happening after that. If you remember, she had kicked him, and then they all converged on her and held her down, and she was screaming. So Grignr just happened
comes out
to be in. This was at the point where he was falling into the mausoleum and heard her screams, and has now fallen
the groin kick initiated the seizure.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Right.
He's still bent over, having a real hard time with the ichor dripping out of his balls or whatever. At any rate, startled by the barbarian's stunning appearance, the chronic fit of their fellow, and the fear that Grignr might be the avant-garde of a conquering force dedicated to the cause of destroying their degenerated cult, the Samen momentarily lost their composure. Giving vent to heedless pandemonium, the priests fell easy prey to Grignr's sweeping arc of crimsoned death and maiming destruction. The acolyte performing the sacrifice took a vicious blow to the stomach, hands clutching vitals and severed spinal cord as he sprawled over the altar. The disorganized priests lurched and staggered with split skulls, dismembered limbs, and spewing entrails before the enraged accordion's relentless onslaught. The howless of the maimed and dying reverberated against the walls of the tiny chamber, a chorus of hell fraught despair, as the granite floor ran red with blood. The entire chamber was encompassed in the heat of raw savage butchery as Grignr luxuriated in the grips of a primitive, beastly bloodlust. Also, if the floor here is granite, that implies that this has been finished. So it's a temple that's been finished down below the mausoleum, down below the dungeon, which was not finished.
Yeah. Yeah, the dungeon was a cave with cells.
Yeah. So what's under this? I mean, it just
just keeps going.
The Prince and God Emperor Lord's palace is actually underneath all of this.
I hope so. Presently, all went silenet, save for the ebbing groans of the sinking shaman and Grignr's heaving breath, accompanied by several gusty curses. The well had run dry. No more lambs remained for the slaughter. The rampaging steed of death, having taken of Grignr for the moment, left the barbarian free to the exploitation of his other perusials.
What the fuck does that sentence mean?
Don't do it, Grignr.
Yeah, no, bad. Keep those thoughts away, please.
Towering over his head was the misshaped image of the cult's hideous deity, Argon. How do you know?
Yeah,
The fantastic size of the idol and consideration of its being of pure jade was enough to cause the senses of any man to stagger and reel. Yet thus was not the case for the behemoth. He had paid only casual notice to this incredible fact, while riveting the whole of his attention upon the jewel protruding from the idol's sole socket, its masterfully cut faucets, emitting blinding rays of hypnotizing beauty. After all,
how is faucet spelled in this instance? Just because I'm curious.
Faucets.
Okay, so it dispenses drink.
Yes, it's a gym and sink.
Convenient.
It's crying eyes. After all, a man cannot slink from a heavily guarded palace while burdened down by the intense bulk of a squatting statue, providing, of course, that the idol can even be hefted, which in fact was beyond the reaches of Grignr's coursing stamina. On the other hand, the jewel, gigantic as it was, would not present a hindrance of any mean concern. Help me, please. I can make it well worth your while.
Oh God! We just went immediately to that. Yeah. That's the first sentence out of this lady's mouth. The first thing she said.
Why'd you have to call her a lady? I can make it well worth your while, pleaded a soft, anguish-strewn voice wafting over Grignr's shoulders as he plucked the dull red emerald from its roots. Turning, Grignr faced the female that had lured him into his bloodbath, but whom had become all but forgotten in the heat of the battle. You! Ejaculated the accordion in a pleased tone.
Oh.
Well, that was...
What's that?
I mean, last time it was just a hug, so he's been in a pit for a while.
The rat couldn't do it for him.
I thought that I had seen the last of you at the tavern, but verily I was mistaken. Grignr advanced into the grips of the female's entrancing stare, severing the golden chains that held her captive upon the altar's highly polished face of ornamental limestone.
You don't make your fucking chains out of gold, idiots.
As Grignr lifted the girl from the altar, her arms wound dexterously about his neck, soft and smooth against his harsh exterior. Art thou pleased that we have chanced to meet once again? Grignr merely voiced a sighed grunt, returning the damsel's embrace while he smothered her trim, delicate lips between the coursing protrusions of his reeking maw.
Now is not the time. Also, she probably still tastes like puke.
Let us take leave of this wretched chamber, stated Grignr as he placed the female upon her feet. She swooned a moment, causing Grignr to give her support, then regained her stance. Art thou able to find your way through the accursed passages of this castle? Horrific. Every one of the corridors... Horrific. M-R-I-F-K. Horrific. Apparently it's an expletive in whatever.
Right. World building, I guess.
I looked it up. I know what that is. I'm not telling you guys until later.
That's fine.
Fair enough. Horrific. Every one of the corridors of this damned place are identical. I was at one time a slave of Prince Agathim. His clammy touch sent a sour swill through my belly, but my efforts reaped a harvest. I gained the pig's liking, whereby he allowed me the freedom of the palace. It was through this means that I eventually managed escape of the palace. It was a
Book has a
simple
healthy
matter.
view of women.
Do you know how this conversation could have gone? Let's get out of here. I don't know. I do. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, now we get to know that she was also, their speech patterns have completely swapped from the beginning of the story.
Mhm.
Like, when we met this character, she was the one that spoke in ridiculously out of place Old English
These
style.
and thous, yeah.
And now she's speaking plain English, and he is using these and thous and whatnot. So,
What's that about?
I don't know. Just thought I'd pull attention to that.
Yeah.
I gained the pig's liking, whereby he allowed me the freedom of the palace. It was through this means that I eventually managed escape of the palace. It was a simple matter to seduce the sentry at the western gate. His trust found him with a dagger thrust his ribs. The wench stated whimsicorically.
What? Whimsical what?
Whimsicorically.
Is that another portmanteau?
That's not a word. What were you doing at the tavern whence I discovered you? Asked Grignr as he lifted the female through the opening into the mausoleum. I had sought to lay low from the palace's guards as they conducted their search for me. The tavern was seldom frequented by the palace guards, and my identity was unknown to the common soldiers. It was through the disturbance that you caused that the palace guards were attracted to the tavern. I was dragged away shortly after you were escorted to the palace. What are you called by, female?
Yeah, because, guards are never known in any story or ever to go to the tavern when they're off duty. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, weren't they actually off duty at the... maybe I'm wrong. I thought they were off duty when they were
I can't remember,
drunk
to be honest.
or something. It doesn't matter. What are you called by, female? Carthena, daughter of Mincardos, Duke of Barwigo, whose lands border along the northwestern fringes of Gorzam.
This lady is nobility? And this is where she's at? Are you kidding me?
She's yeah.
Like, any mistreatment of this lady could result in open war.
No. The next sentence has you covered. The next sentence has you covered. I was paid as homage to Agathim upon his 38th year, husked the femme. So she was sold because, noble child, she was sold as a bride to this prince, whatever.
Usually you do that to, seal an alliance.
Yeah. But now he owns her, so he can do whatever he wants, right? That's the implication there.
Yeah. Also, husk femme. Did I hear you correctly?
The femme.
All right.
And I am called a barbarian, grunted Grignr in a disgusted tone. The ways of our civilization are in many ways warped and distorted. But what is your calling? She queried, bustily.
Yeah,
Grignr of Accordia. I'd like to also remind everyone that these two have already apparently, made love in the bar.
In the bar, yeah.
Now they're exchanging names. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
And also,
you run into this woman twice. You better get her name.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys remember that scene in Star Wars when Han Solo was running through the corridors and he came across, he was chasing those stormtroopers and he found a battalion of them and he turned and he ran, And then while they were running, they he and Chewbacca just stopped and started going over each other's history. That was my favorite scene.
Yeah. That was. Wait. No, that never happened because that was good.
Yeah,
because that was good.
That was a good story that maintained a sense of urgency.
I have heard vaguely of Ecordia. It is the hill country to the far east of the Norgolian Empire. I have also heard Agaphim curse your land more than once when his troops were routed in the unaccustomed mountains and gorges. Yeah, hilly, mountainous, desert country.
Yeah.
With forests.
There's a surprising amount. This is a realized world, though.
Yeah.
Shit.
My people are not tarnished by petty luxuries and baubles. They remain fierce and unconquerable in their native climes. After reaching the hidden panel at the head of the stairway, Grignr was at a loss in regard to its operation. His fiercest heaves were as pebbles against the burnished armor. Carthena depressed a small symbol included within the elaborate design upon the panel, whereupon it slowly slid into a cleft in the wall. How did you come to be a victim of those crazed shaman? Quested Grignr as he escorted Carthena through the piles of rummage on the left side of the trap. By Agaphim's orders, I was thrust into a secluded cell to await his passing of sentence. By some means, the priests of Argon acquired a set of keys to the cell. They slew the guard placed over me and abducted me to the chamber in which you chanced to come upon the Skostic sacrifice.
Wait, so the religious order operates independently of the ruling family?
Apparently,
so.
Yeah, it's an underground cult of Argon.
In the basement of the dungeon.
Yeah.
Which is a sentence I just said.
Their hell-spawned cult demands a sacrifice once every 3 moons upon its full journey through the heavens. They were startled by your unannounced appearance through the fear that you had been sent by Agaphim. The prince would surely have submitted them to the most ghastly of tortures if he had ever discovered their unfaithfulness to Sargon, his bastard deity.
So the gods in this universe are Sargon and Argon.
Yep. And Argon needs someone to be killed in his name every 3 months. That's a hard ask for a secret cult. I'm just going to go out and say it. Like, good God. Many of the partakers of the ritual were high nobles and high trustees of the inner palace. Agaphim's pitiless wrath would have been unparalleled.
So not only were they taking sacrifices, they are taking high-profile sacrifices.
Well, no, they themselves were high nobles. So, yeah, the cult is the...
Oh, I see.
But not the prince himself, because he is a faithful ritual or follower of Sargon.
Not Argon.
Not Argon. No, fuck Argon. Sargon or nothing.
I feel like you could get those books confused and not even notice, the holy books of those religions.
Yeah. They have no more to fear of Agaphim now, bellowed Grignr in a deep, mirthful tone, a gleeful smirk upon his face. I have seen that they were delivered from his vengeance. Engrossed by Carthena's graceful stride and conversation, Grignr failed to take note of the footfalls rapidly approaching behind him. As he swung aside the arched portal linking the chamber with the corridors beyond, a maddened, blood-lusting screech reverberated from his eardrums, seemingly utilizing the speed of thought.
His eardrums? His eardrums are screaming?
Seemingly utilizing the speed of thought, Grignr swiveled to face his unknown foe. With gaping eyes and widened jaws, Grignr raised his axe above his surly mane, but he was too late. Chapter 7. With wobbling knees and swimming head, the priest that had lapsed into an epileptic seizure rose unsteadily to his feet. While enacting his choking fit in writhing agony, the shaman was overlooked by Grignr. The barbarian had mistaken the seizure for the death throes of the acolyte, allowing the priest to avoid his stinging blade. The sight that met the priest's inflamed eyes nearly served to sprawl him upon the floor once more. Sacrificial sat it grim, blood-splattered silence all around him, broken only by the occasional yelps and howls of his maimed and butchered fellows. Above his head rose the hideous idol, empty socket holding the shaman's eye-furbished, infuriated gaze. His eyes turned to a stony glaze with the realization of the pillage and blasphemy. Due to his high susceptibility following the seizure, the priest was transformed into a raving maniac bent solely upon wreaking vengeance. With lips curled and quivering, a crust of foam dripping from them, the acolyte drew a long, wicked-looking, jewel-hilted scimitar from his silver girdle, fled through the aperture in the ceiling, uttering a faintly perceptible ceremonial gibberish. Chapter 7.5. A sweeping scimitar swung toward Grignr's head in a shadowed blur of motion. With axe raised over his head, Grignr prepared to parry the blow, while gaping wide-eyed in open-mouthed perplexity. Suddenly, a sharp snap resounded behind the frothing shaman. The scimitar, halfway through its fatal sweep, dropped from a quivering, nerveless hand, clattering harmlessly to the stonage. Cutting his screech short with a bubbling, red-mouthed gurgle, the lacerated acolyte staggered under the pressure of the released springboard. After a moment of hopeless struggling, the shaman buckled, sprawling face down in a widening pool of blood and entrails, his regal purple robe blending enhancingly with the swirling streams of crimson. "Rifk! I thought I had killed the last of those dogs," muttered Grignr in a half-apathetic state.
Grignr's over it.
"Nay, Grignr, you doubtless grew careless while giving vent to your lusts. But let us not tarry any long, lest we overtax the fates. The paths leading to freedom will soon be barred." The wretch's cries must certainly have attracted unwanted attention, the wench mused. By what direction shall we pursue our flight? Up that stair and down the corridor a short distance is the concealed entrance to a tunnel seldom used by others than the prince, and known to few others save the palace's royalty. It is used mainly by the prince when he wishes to take leave of the palace in secret. It is not always in the prince's best interest to leave his chateau in public view. Even while under heavy guard, he is often assaulted by hurtling stones and rotting fruits. The commoners have little love for him, lectured the Nera lady.
Just real quick, I was thinking over the use of Old English, and like, is it really worth it to like put all that effort to do that and have your audience at current day English, not like grapple with
like
it, as it were.
Yeah. Also, why is this chat? We could have ended the book and it would have been fine.
Really. But I thought about another example of of media that uses Old English, and my favorite game series of all time, Dark Souls, sometimes utilizes Old English, although it's only with characters that are of like noble birth or are from like a church.
Sure, right. Sure. And there's an argument to be made for that, and I think it's fine to use that sort of linguistic flourish, particularly if you want to set people apart to say, for instance, they are noble or they are more educated, etc., etc.
Part of the papacy, yada yada yada.
Yeah, whatever you're trying to do with it, but it has to be consistent. Like, you can't suddenly have your character not using that style of language anymore, and the other character who never did suddenly doing it. or you run into some issues.
It's weird. It's confusing.
Okay, so, I need either of you guys to help me. What is a character that is known for speaking, like in any given story? Like a character that is known for their ability to speak or public speaking or something of that nature.
Hamlet.
Okay, imagine if Hamlet just started like speaking in the just mid sentence started speaking in the thickest Scottish accent.
Right.
No, I'll do you one better. A Southern accent.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey, fun fact that I actually kind of know. Turns out that the accent of Elizabethan English, so Shakespeare's English, would have sounded, when spoken, very similar to the accent of the modern-day American Southerner mixed with a little bit of Irish.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
So next time you're, reading any kind of Shakespeare, just picture it being done by
an Irishman from southern United States.
Yeah. Like, just boss hog reading Shakespeare. That's what I want people to take away from this. Or if that's a somewhat dated reference, because nobody knows who the Dukes of Hazzard are anymore. I don't know, Foghorn Leghorn.
That's a good one. Although that might be a dated reference too.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know. I'm fucking dated. Who's a Southerner? Who speaks with a Southern accent? Jesus.
Matthew McConaughey.
Ah, yes, Matthew McConaughey. Perfect example. I now want, Matthew McConaughey to be in charge of reading, like, Macbeth.
I mean, that would be kind of awesome.
I'm about to say, I feel like he could do right by that.
All right. Lay on, Macduff, and damned be he that first cries, hold enough.
What was he in recently?
Lots of things.
Yeah, he's pretty consistently getting work these days.
Pretty prolific.
Yeah.
So yeah, Eye of Argon.
Got a little bit left to go, guys. There's, still chapter 7.5 if you all are interested in hearing that as well, plus the brief lost ending. Let us know. We'll make it happen for you.
Yep.
But otherwise, encourage you to check it out on your own. Read through it. We'll preserve a little bit of mystery for the end of the story for you.
True, yeah. Do look at, if you can, I'll put the link in the description, the original hand mimeographed print of this story, because the illustrations are kind of a fun ride.
They're great. I mean, they're crude. They're I think probably drawn by the author.
I hope so.
Yeah. And he was, again, a kid, a teenager, not someone with a lot of experience, but a lot of passion.
Oh yeah.
And this is a fun story.
It is.
It's not a good story. And I kind of wonder how much of this was informed by, I mean, obviously he was growing up reading Tolkien and Howard and Lovecraft and all of the pulp authors, probably some August Derleth and
Right.
who else, who the hell else knows, but
Which may have even informed like his over description.
Yeah, because
those writers tend to indulge in that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, pulp fiction is just full of that. It's just full of that kind of purple prose, lurid writing, the, tendency to use 17 words when you could use 3. I get into arguments with people I used to get into arguments. It's becoming more common of an opinion, but I'm a big fan of Lovecraft, but the man was an awful writer.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to being an awful person in general.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't very good at what he did. He was just imaginative.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. Like his language was terrible. I rolled my eyes every time that he would like try to describe something indescribable, and he would just say it's indescribable and move on, and like that's it. Like you're not even gonna try. Like come
But that's
on.
not even so much the part that I have an issue with, because that was part of the the horror of it. Like, I'm not going to tell you what this looks like because it is literally indescribable, and then your brain does the heavy lifting. That's actually kind of a good technique. Yeah, I'm one of those people that I think the original Alien film was great because you didn't see the alien. Like,
Oh yeah.
You never got to see the thing. It was terrifying because what the fuck is it? You catch small glimpses here and there, The best thing that ever happened to Spielberg was the fucking mechanical shark not working, because it meant that they couldn't have that thing all over Jaws. And, those few minutes when you do actually get to see it make it much more effective. I don't want to see the monster. I want to be afraid of it. Once you see it, it's not scary anymore.
Yeah.
That's always been my opinion. So, kind of why I feel like, oh shit, I am not doing great with remembering names of things today. The movie about the A24 film, not Midsummer, Hereditary. Hereditary, yeah.
We still need to see that.
Yeah, Hereditary is an amazing film. I highly recommend it to everyone.
Greatly.
But I do feel like it breaks down just a little bit at the end. Because, and I don't know how they could have done it any better. Maybe I just need to watch it again. But it goes from this incredible...
We could get together and watch it online at some point.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I still need to see it.
Right on. Yeah, we can make that happen. But I guess my point is, in terms of all of that it's better to give just a little. Let your audience...
Once you've seen the monster or the... Yeah.
I actually have a personal phrase that I came up with to describe what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And I may have said this on the show already before, but describe something too much and it belongs to the author. Describe something too little and it belongs to no one. Describe something just enough and it belongs to the reader.
Yeah,
nice.
Definitely.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
I think that's a good conclusion. Just to end on that note. So yeah, if you like what you hear, please find us on social media. Send the podcast a message and just say hey, and I'll probably engage with you, unless you're weird and creep me out.
In which case, I'll probably engage with you.
Sure, fair enough. We got Facebook, we got the Instagram. If you're a YouTube listener, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heaving bosom content from Brainworms.
Thanks, guys.
Farewell.
Any copyrighted content contained within this podcast used for purposes of review. Brainworms podcast is David Combs, Christian Schaefer, and Joseph Wells. Editing and post-production by David Combs. Art provided by Kaine Magdalen. The theme music is Hodgepod No. 1 by Brian Davis. If you like what you heard, please support us on Patreon or Ko-Fi, or by leaving a review on your favorite listening app.